China is going to eat our lunch? Come on, man. They can't even figure out how to deal with the fact that they have this great division between the China Sea and the mountains in the east, in the west. They can't figure out how they're going to deal with the corruption that exists within the system. They're not bad folks, but guess what? They're not competition for us.
On this episode of Justinformed Talk, we're going to check out the latest about Joe Biden's connection to China. This is a story that has been developing for quite some time, but now with him running for president, I think it bears all the more necessity that we take a closer look in. We talk about what Q said about this in the past and how important it really is. So you guys want to stick around and check it out. May 2nd, and we're at May 7th now, and it looks like we're going to be basically watching a lot more just happen in the news rather than get it here on the boards, because everything is actually falling into place. But we still have to cover the news. The mainstream media refuses to, so let's get right into it. The first thing we're going to talk about is this story that's developing, which I can tell you right now, there is an incredible story here about Hunter Biden, the son of Joe Biden, and his connections to China, and how that all relates back to what we've talked about here on the Q boards for quite some time. So let's just get right into it. So before we read some excerpts from this actual story that was just reported by The Intercept, by Lee Fang here, we're going to look back at the Q posts that talk about Biden. And every time Q's mentioned Biden, he's mentioned China. And there's a very, very specific reason for that. And it has a lot to do, or basically everything to do with the story that we're going to be talking about here later. But first, this was a post we got from Q back in 2018, March. So this was over a year ago now. And it says, how bad is the corruption? And it talks about all of the different individuals and their positions that were complicit or in on this Russia collusion hoax. And this was giving us a good idea of the people, and not just the Russia collusion hoax. We're going back to things like Fast and Furious, Uranium One, the Hillary Clinton email investigation, everything you can imagine. So of course, it says here, you have the number one, and the number one's twice. So it's the past and present. So you're thinking people who came before and then people who came after. So of course it talks about the former and present at the time director of the FBI, and then the second in charge plus 29 people, the former and current head of the DOJ at that time, which was like Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch, and then the second in charge too, plus 18, State Department, number one and number one, so the former and the present for the Obama administration, which was Kerry, and who could forget our most favorite Secretary of State of all time, Hillary Clinton, plus 41 out of the State Department, talking about how removal is the least of their problems, especially given what they did with this whole Russia thing. And it was all projection. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever forget that everything that we've been told about the Russia connection between President Trump, if you just switch President Trump's name out with Obama and Hillary, you basically have you have enough evidence to go, especially if you look at Uranium One and what the Ukrainians are coming out with now. So there's just an incredible amount of information that's showing that these individuals are responsible for some pretty bad stuff, and then they project it on us, which is a very Machiavellian thing to do. Talking about the Twitter bots that Google operated, were not Russia. And then it says slant, Biden, China, big development, traders everywhere, America for sale. You can also see, again here, Biden is connected to China directly by Q. And it talks about following the family, following resignations. It says Biden, China, very important marker. And it says who made it public, who really made it public, who is making it all public. We are the gatekeepers of all. By all, we mean all information. And that's talking about Q. And then it talks about Uranium One to Canada, EU, Russia, Iran, North Korea, Syria, Pakistan. And then it talks, of course, about the $700 billion military budget and all that. So what you have to remember, though, is that in these mentions of Biden here, which there aren't many, of course, there's just those two that I can really locate right now. But in those mentions, you have to remember that what you're being shown is this story that's now being broken. So when we say that we're tomorrow's news today and all that stuff, it's kind of incredibly true and accurate because these stories are coming out one by one. The beginning of the story talks about this group that does an app. It's called Face Plus Plus, and it's a division of MEVG, who's one of their primary investors is Alibaba Group, who's directly connected to Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, because he was one of the prominent investors in all of these companies that we're mentioning here, this Face Plus Plus and MEVG, and or MEGVII. And what this talks about is that the Human Rights Watch released a troubling report that was documenting how this Chinese government or this Chinese app for your phone was being used to basically target the Uyghur Muslims in the western provinces of China, which are typically more Muslim and less Chinese, and that there's been this huge crackdown on basically any kind of religion in Western China, especially the autonomous region of where the Uyghurs are out there, which is not really autonomous, of course. And this is a very, very troubling thing. It's the province of Zhejiang. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but these minority Muslims are being targeted by the Chinese Communist government because they're just putting out draconian policies to go ahead and try to stop any uprising of terrorism inside their own country. So, of course, this company has direct ties to Hunter Biden, and that's where the story begins. But where it really begins is right down here. And in order to understand this, you also have to understand this Bohai Harvest company, who is one of the primaries that's being run by Biden's son. He's probably listed as one of the primary individuals in charge there, and it's Bohai Harvest, which is a directly connected to the Bank of China, operated in China, and there's a lot to unpack there. But just suffice it to say that this is a very big company in China that is being funded and run by the family members of Joe Biden, and there's some very suspicious timing on how everything got started. So this is talking about how it all became that and who was in it together. So don't forget too that one of the things of this story that people throw out the window a lot is that Hunter Biden's actually working at a company with the former Secretary of State's son or stepson, Christopher Heinz. Now, John Kerry's wife is the Heinz heiress. You guys know Heinz ketchup. So and I did a whole video on this guy, Devin Archer, too. So you have Devin Archer, you have Christopher Heinz, you have Hunter Biden, all working together right now to at this company, which was called Rosemont Seneca. And Rosemont Seneca was basically an investment firm that was a part of all of this. And we're going to read about it. I'm just going to start reading this to you right now. So remember, they're all in this company together. It says, in 2014, the partners began setting up operations in China. The RS in Bohai Harvest, RST, stands for Rosemont Seneca, and the T stands for Thornton Group. The latter group is an international consulting firm based in Massachusetts that was founded by James Bolger, the son of the longtime Kerry ally and former Massachusetts State Senate President William Bolger. It says the company, according to the Wall Street Journal, planned to raise $1.5 billion, taking advantage of Shanghai's free enterprise zone to convert yuan to dollars to be invested in foreign companies. Business registration filings in China list Hunter Biden, Schwerin, and James Bolger as key officials at Bohai Harvest. Last year, author Peter Schweitzer criticized the timing of Bohai Harvest's launch, claiming that the exclusive deal coincided with negotiations between then Vice President Joe Biden and the Chinese government. So like I said before, what you guys saw in the beginning of the video was Joe Biden admitting that, he knows very well all about the dispute in the South China Sea and what their territorial claim has expanded to. Now, at the same time that Joe Biden was over there negotiating this claim with them, and basically, China got what they wanted. They have their 9-dash line that outlines that they own most of the South China Sea. But they got what they wanted to a degree. I'm not sure that we fully recognize it, but we definitely stood down and let them build military bases in the middle of it. So I don't know what you call that. But what happened here was right after Joe Biden left China, or went to China, to negotiate these things, right after that, somehow magically, his son got over $1 billion in financing from the Chinese state bank.